Thank you for being here today. I'm Liz Sulkin, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Sustainability Laboratories Conversation Series. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's very exciting to be back in the swing of this series after our summer break. I'm looking forward to a really exciting conversation. Today, it is my privilege to introduce to you Dr. Mariana Bozesan, who's a distinguished AI pioneer, investor, and serial tech entrepreneur, known for her work in integral investing, which focuses on using technology to address global challenges like decarbonization and achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2050. An advocate for women's rights, she co-founded the Equality Moonshot with UNCTAD. She advises governments, corporations, and NGOs and has been recognized with awards like the Golden Angelina Award, the EBAN Award, and as a member of the Club of Rome and the World Academy of Art and Science, she has authored books, including Integral Investing from Profit to Prosperity. Welcome, Dr. Bozesan.
Thank you so very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mariana. I'm really looking forward to this conversation so much. Let's see how it's unfold. I had this idea yesterday that I will have an AI bot replace me and talk with you, but I'm just not good enough in that technology to figure out how to do it. So after we had that kind of formal presentation by Liz, perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about yourself on a personal note, the making of Mariana Bozesan. Tell us about growing up, milestones in your development, major important inspiration, mentors, basically what brought you to where you are today.
Well, what made me what I am today is standing on the shoulders of the extraordinary people like you who have helped me along the way. So that's the summary. and incredible hard work. I was born and raised in communist Romania, which makes it these days even more important to me because I know what it means to go to school hungry in a dictatorship. And so to see how the world is unfolding these days reminds me of the danger associated with us losing democracy because it's become so easy. So yeah, and at age 16, my parents and we left Romania because my mother was German. So the German government paid Ceausescu's regime money for leaving, letting us to come to Germany. They needed workers. We all need immigrants. We need more people than we're able to produce ourselves. And so yeah, that's what made me join the free world. And tomorrow, actually, it's 50 years that, I'm celebrating. In the meantime, unfortunately, my parents left this world. But yeah, so I think having experienced these democracy and dictatorship, and I was a indoctrinated communist as a young person, as you would imagine, and I very much benefit from the ideals of Marxism and self-understanding of what it means to be a free woman that came from Romania, from that indoctrination. So there are good sides on both models. But what actually helped me was, I wanted to study math, and I went to school to study math, but then computer science showed up, and I didn't really particularly like programming, Pascal or COBOL or the traditional languages. And very soon, actually, 41 years ago, I attended the Artificial Intelligence Joint Conference on Artificial Intelligence at the University of Karlsruhe, and I was exposed to artificial intelligence. And ever since then, I saw that it is possible to program and to develop systems using similar kind of thinking as humans do. And so that's why my background in artificial intelligence was born there. So this is an important aspect of, but then the internet era started, and so I began riding the exponential wave, which is what we're actually riding collectively today. So I think this is important for our conversation. And of course, I ended up at Stanford and in Silicon Valley and programming chip design. I did chip design with AI and AI systems and so on. So I think this is the most important. And of course, as I saw that the world needs more compassion, I went back to school and I got my PhD in philosophy and psychology, and we can talk about that, how the world needs more of the interior aspects in psychology as we are unfolding and applying artificial intelligence and everything that is connected to it today.
I know that Ken Wilber was a big influence on your thinking and work. Maybe you can talk about this a little bit. I think it's an important part of the conversation anyway, because it kind of leads us in a direction that is systemic and integrative and so on.
Yes, well, I'm a business person, and I've always worked, in corporate America and career woman, if you so wish. And I saw the dysfunctionality in the business world way back, and particularly after our first exit IPO to Wall Street with one of our first companies. My husband has a similar background, computer scientist, AI. We saw that something is really wrong with the world. On one hand, you go to have an IPO, go public on Wall Street, and on the other, you go or in the evening to fundraising events. Or you give money to your wife, and I'm being particularly facetious now, to donate. So you kind of, balance it out. And that's not a good model, but it is the model in which we live today that is quite schizophrenic. On one hand, you have the for-profit organizations, and on the other, the not-for-profit organizations. And the mindset that goes along with these, with the structures that we put in place today, is very representative and influences how we operate in the world. The NGOs, oh my God, I'm here for doing good and doing well, doing good, and those other guys are doing well. But the system is schizophrenic, and so we're kind of competing with one another for the same thing, namely money. And so I looked for a model that would help me address that, because as somebody who came from poverty and hunger, my parents, who were poor workers, were blue collar people, they taught me philanthropy. Because that means loving people, the love of people. And so I thought, something is really wrong. Why do we need philanthropy to set off Wall Street? And so I looked for a model that would help me integrate. And actually, it was Tony Robbins, of all people, that I was a student of, who introduced me to the work of Ken Wilber. And then I went back to get my PhD and wanted to study integral psychology and philosophy. Ken Wilber is one of the smartest people alive today. He's an American philosopher, and he provided me with integral theory, the model that that has really, really helped me with my work ever since that first IPO in the mid-90s. And and he endorsed, several of my books, including the last one on integral investing, integral entrepreneurship. How can we use a more multi-perspectival view of the world in order to not create the dysfunctionality that we currently have moving forward? And so we could talk about that later, particularly within the context of artificial intelligence, because Ken Wilber came up with a very comprehensive definition of intelligence that goes beyond cognition, to include emotional and spiritual and psychosocial and many others. So he has about 20 different kinds of intelligences that make us people, humans, and AIs are far from it.
Well, this is good. I think that gives us a good opening into our topic itself. And, obviously this AI technology is becoming the hottest field today everywhere. And with so much hype, it's very easy to get confused. So perhaps you can help us by helping us understand what is AI, what does the term mean, what technologies does the term cover?
Well, AI was first named by John McCarthy in 1956. Most people think that AI has fallen out of the skies 2020 in the fall when ChatGPT and other large language models conquered the world and we began being confronted with them. But it's not true. It's been a long way ever since 1956, where John McCarthy and about 10 other scientists, mathematicians, had a workshop, a several days workshop, more than a week at Dartmouth. And they coined the term artificial intelligence as opposed to biological intelligence or non-biological intelligence. And they named about five areas to copy human intelligence, and you will find these 5 areas today too in various forms. But in terms of wrapping our arms around what it is, it's copying human vision. So vision is one, expert systems, expertise. What are we good at? In my case, that's what I use expertise to build chip designs. That was my particular area. Then natural language, which is the large language models processing. That's the one that we're now experiencing through ChatGPT. Then it was theorem proving, like how to prove a theorem, theoretical computer science, if you so wish, and robotics. So these are the top 5 areas, and we'll find them again in the way we use and apply AI today. So that was the first wave, if you so wish. However, it was very soon recognized that in order to implement all of that, and they were originally very optimistic, it's going to happen within the next couple of years, 10 years at the most, they recognized that the computing power to have such systems run needs to be abundant, a lot of it, and that you need a lot of data to train these systems, to get the expertise from the experts and put them into a computer and copy it. And so it took a long, long time. It took about 1986 when the second wave came. It was important, and a very important name. Jeff Hinton was one of the originators of that paper, where neural nets were developed, a means of a type of machine learning that copies the way humans think, our brain works, neural nets. So that was a breakthrough, but because the computing power was not available and the data was not accessible in the way and the amount that it was needed for AI, the AI winter came, which I was part of it. I had to change jobs. I had to look for something else in order to survive, because and it went down a little bit. But the research continued, and it wasn't until 25 years later, this is how long it takes actually for such systems, when Jeff Hinton again, together with other scientists, came up with multi-layer neural nets. And another algorithm, recursive learning, to train themselves. And this is what we have today. So it was 2012. They applied it within vision, pattern recognition, where you can, teach computers to see. And this is what we have today. That's the technology at the foundational, the foundational models that we have, LLMs. And another aspect, that another paper that came 3 years later, which is also connected with our conversation today is based on the work of a Stanford professor. John McCarthy was my professor at Stanford when I was an exchange student there. But another important contribution came from B.J. Fogg, also a Stanford professor, and now that ties in with my education in psychology. He used behavioral psychology tools to help AI developers teach artificial intelligence behavior as humans behave. And this is the foundation of many aggravations and bad things that happened through Facebook, and because they were teaching the AIs how humans behave in order to manipulate us to buy more, follow, computers in deadlocks and so on. Well, fill somebody else's pockets, so to speak. And now this is maybe the right time to bring a little bit of psychology into the conversation, and why I mentioned behavioral psychology algorithms. And by the way, AIs are using algorithms. It's nothing else. It's not magical. It's a program, basically, that was developed by people, which is an important aspect. Even if they don't know what's happening and how the results are being produced, it's still a deterministic algorithm. So in terms of psychology, and this is a red thread that needs to go through the entire conversation, is the evolution of psychology and our understanding of psychology. Because the more we evolve toward human potential, the Maslow and all the wonderful Esalen people in the New Age movement, toward that transpersonal psychology, the better for all of us. So that will be a call to all of us who are afraid later on. But let me start at the beginning. What is behavioral psychology that is actually behind all the troubles that we have and we see today? The first wave in psychology was the analytical psychology that was defined by Freud, and we have Carl Jung and others. That was analytical psychology. It was the first wave in psychology. Then, and this is something is still practiced, it's still active, but it evolved. Our understanding of therapy evolved. And it was influenced in the 1920s by what's called behavioral psychology, which we find behind those LLMs today. And that is Skinner. Skinner is a psychologist who looked at pigeons and Pavlov's dog is something that most of us are familiar with. So we kind of observe animals and kind of looked at us and how our behavior is to be formally put into or understood or applied to understand ourselves. And this is 1920s, like 100 years ago. That theory is now being applied in AI. But psychology has evolved a little bit in that time frame. And I mentioned before Abraham Maslow with his pyramid of needs and human potential movement in the 1960s and so on. That's not on the landscape of many teaching organizations or universities today, although it ought to be, because now we're building models based on old psychology instead of modern, and where humanity actually is and has evolved. So humanistic psychology, and which was a term put forth by Abe Maslow in the around 1960s, and 2 years later, Stan Grof came up with the term transpersonal psychology because it should include some other dimensions like spirituality. And this is the conversation that we need to have. This is what we need to influence the AIs today in order to serve us to become better and have better judgments.
So
and not
we'll
destroy
get to all
us.
of that in a little later because it's fascinating where it leads us. Of course, the conclusion that it leads us. But first, a couple of comments before we get to the next. In the 60s, I worked at the system research, the laboratories of Gordon Pask, who was a very important British cybernetician. And Gordon was trying to develop a theory, a theory, what is the psychology of knowing? And at the time, and that relates also to your AI winter in the 60s, he started developing some teaching machines. The technology was very primitive, it was basically analog computing. And one project that has all the ingredients that today everybody jumping up and down about was a machine that taught you how to type. And that machine was a typing machine that could give you exercises and then adapt the exercises that it gives you, adjusting levels of difficulties and speed by your performance. So, and this is why, incidentally, I always had myself a little problem with the term artificial intelligence. I don't think there's anything artificial in the world. This is one cosmos, and everything that exists is part of nature, including us. And I think the designation artificial is one of the elements that creates a lot of problems that we'll investigate a little later. But for the moment, let's go back a step and see where is that, what is the current status of AI? What is the current status of development? And what is likely, what we can anticipate in the near future?
The current situation is that we are using these deep learning algorithms that were part of the, that were born out of the paper that I mentioned in 2012 by Jeff Hinton. And so this is basically the multi-level neural nets with recursive machine learning that with weights and others, I don't want to go into the details, that we see today. And the application is within the natural language processing. This is what large language models mean. And they are basically blubbermouths. So they are extremely fast and give us the impression that they understand what we mean. But just the other day, I wanted to get a summary of a company that does collective AI and uses as asynchronous and anonymous feedback. And the LLM couldn't, understand what it means to split one large sentence into two and keep the points, the key points within the two sentences. It just did not get, because it doesn't understand. It doesn't understand, doesn't have any meta knowledge. It's just a blubbermouth. It's just extremely fast. And so this is the models that we are having today. I don't want to go into the details as to how they work further, but they will increasingly include vision, so that analyzing videos will also be part of it. It's not there yet. It takes a long time. Another Jan LeCun, who's another father of AI, says it's going to take a long time to get there because it's very difficult. And to his Jan LeCun said, AIs are dumber than a house cat, so we shouldn't be afraid of anything. It doesn't mean that you cannot use them to bombard people, to kill people. That's not what it says. It says by itself, they are dumber than a pencil. And they will stay that way because we are non-computational as human beings. So there are, they give the impression that there is a self-reflection in there because they do recursive thinking, and they do that thinking because they go very fast. But there is nobody in there. There is no sentience. There is no consciousness. And coming back to the original introduction that I made, as long as we don't know what consciousness is, or sentience, or life, neither of that, we don't have any definitions of this. We don't know how, you mentioned nature before, how that evolves. We cannot, AIs, we won't be able to program AIs so that they can mimic it, they can pretend that they are compassionate because we program them. But we ourselves need to understand what compassion is and describe it, just like B.J. Fox described behavioral and came up with some handrails to that are currently being used. So that's currently the most important thing is that, which is true for computers in general, is they're huge at scaling. They scale extremely fast. But it's all cognitive. It's not emotional. So if we go now to defining what intelligence is, and I could bring to Ken Wilber's definition, and maybe Howard Gardner of Harvard. There are two major definitions that people might recognize. So all is reduced to cognition, or the data that is available in collectively. So the current another structure for artificial intelligence to know what it is, it's artificial natural intelligence. This is what we currently have. Artificial general intelligence is what people hope to get at some point, and there are some, that means that it's an AI that can achieve goals. You give it a goal. Right now, it's not possible to tell, well, book me a flight to Tel Aviv, and with everything that I need to get from Berlin. It can't do that. So it does not have the ability to break it down into tasks and go and do that. So this is the goal, is to really put an AI into a position to get to artificial general intelligence, so that it can learn, it can strategize, it can plan. Some people say that this will be available before the end of this decade, but it depends how narrow we define it. Artificial narrow intelligence is what we have today. Artificial general intelligence is what we hope to get. And then artificial superintelligence is when superintelligence uses several AGIs in order to become much, much better than humans and have its own goals. And if that is not well trained, then it's clear what the results could be. So artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and artificial superintelligence. These are the three types of intelligences that are up and coming.
Where are they? How we distinguish the steps or the levels? There's a lot of talk about singularity as a moment where things will take over, so to speak. How do we recognize those points?
Well, it depends how we recognize ourselves. So
Good.
if we, and I don't think we do right now, if we reduce and reductionism and dualism, and reductionism has been a point in your life forever and in mine as well. And if we reduce ourselves to blabbermouths who can work like LLMs today, like ChatGPT, then maybe we could get, to a system that is singularity, close to, the best best blabbermouths in the world very soon. But I don't think that we are not just cognitive intelligence. We have emotional intelligence. We have, and now maybe that's a good point to bring up, some definitions by Ken Wilber, and I have them here. Emotional intelligence, like how do you feel about this? Needs, lines of view. We mentioned Maslow. So there is an evolution of intelligence of human needs. from the base of the Maslow pyramid. I think this is most our listeners are familiar with that, where you have to fulfill your needs, for food, water, shelter, and others. Then to move up, and once those are fulfilled, we move up to self-actualization, which is at the top of the Maslow pyramid. Now, that's the need. This is what we are made of. We are about evolution, becoming better, and so on. But that's not just cognition. It's not just if you read enough books, you don't become a self-actualized, self-fulfilled human being. So I don't think that we have to fear that we'll get there very quickly. And in terms of cognition, if we reduce ourselves to that and all the knowledge that is available, we may get there. But to train, ChatGPT 4 needed 100 million to be trained with data and all the people and so on. Most of that is needed for electricity. And that's very important at a time when we're really having climate issues. So we need to be when we're making predictions about singularity, we need to know where is that electricity coming from? Are we going to pollute our planet and kill ourselves and kill all the planetary boundaries in order to train AIs? For what? To become cognitively, for what? They cannot reason. They do what we tell them. And that depends upon how smart the programmers are. Then another line of intelligence is values, what we value, ethics and morals. Is it an egocentric ethic and moral of an egocentric person, or ethnocentric? America or Hungary or Turkey, or is it world-centric or even cosmocentric ethics and morals? That's another intelligence. How are we going to teach that? And who is going to do that? And how fast, how long does it take? So these are very, very important questions. And I'm glad you're having these kind of conversations that we need to have. Ethics and morals, spirituality, of course. Who are we, human beings? We all are born and will die one day.
We are inching towards that question, but let's go first to look at the impacts and what are the most obvious benefits that are possible now, and what are the possible negative impacts of AI system. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of talk about how it helps tremendously in education by adjusting teaching to the needs of a student, in medicine, in production system, transportation, smart cities, marketers. So maybe you can talk a little bit about those obviously positive potentials, and then we can explore some of the downside.
Yes. Well, obviously the large language models are they're very few because they're extremely expensive. As I said, OpenAI just closed their fundraising for $7 billion to train their next models. So there are governments and large organizations that can afford to do that. So in terms of the positive aspect, there is the application of what's called edge AI. These are, AI that you find on your watch, that can measure your temperature and are available locally, and they're smaller. And they're a huge impact, like you just mentioned, in terms of healthcare. This is extremely helpful once we have a system that can not just look at my heartbeat and blood pressure, but also sugar levels and so on. And so edge AI algorithms are available in applications today that can help in corporations build those tasks and use AI to develop new materials that are sustainable, for instance. There is another, we have invested in an energy company that does fusion reactors, to provide energy without, fossil fuels. And there's a lot of AI that is being applied there too. In accelerating the development, we need those. These are extremely important. Then another way of AIs are very bad in logic thinking. They cannot. So the scientific studies show that they cannot do math. They're very bad. So that is another thing, an area that is currently being developed. Between the failure rate is about between 19 and 41%. So that means that there are smaller AI algorithms that are basically currently implementing through math and physics, to help artificial intelligences become more reliable from that perspective. So that's another technology where we provide more data. I don't want to go into the terms. One is retrieval augmented generated research, or programming that enables, it uses more data to help the AI become mathematically more correct. Yeah, on the edge. So these are smaller models, and everywhere I look, and this is to give me so much hope. The young people are using that. They're digging deeper into artificial intelligence in a smaller way to, for instance, apply. We have invested in a company that does analysis of the skin, pattern recognition, to see whether you have melanoma or what kind of problems you have on your skin. So this is another beautiful application. There, everywhere you see AI applied in a very positive way. And so that gives me another thing that I find extremely important is using artificial intelligence for collective intelligence. How do you coordinate the political discourse in groups, or even come up to decision-making systems in a company? The problem, and we all know, those of us who have read the book, The Wisdom of Crowds, we know that the first person who talks influences the opinion of the rest of the crowd. So the crowd is not wise if one person is allowed to lead it without enabling the collective intelligence to be expressed anonymously and asynchronously. And this is exactly what this CrowdSmart AI is an application that has been developed by my first boss. And that actually coordinates this discourse and helps decision-making so that everyone can contribute with their thoughts into the system, but asynchronously, so in a different time, whenever you have time, and anonymously. And the system distills the wisdom and can help move the decision. So this is an important, extremely important application. So the conversation in terms of AI future centers around, should we have an open AI or closed systems? Or should it be centralized or decentralized? And so this is what what the conversation is currently guided around. And I have supported an initiative, and I've co-authored, and you can find it all on my website, aquagroup.com, on publications, is an invitation, and to create an AI constitution. I think we all need guardrails for where we want to go before it's too late. And so, and there is this collective, my friend, I'm not a lawyer, but so we need law, and we need a lot of smart people like you to help us join in having this conversation, this is just the beginning of a conversation that we must have, because human creativity is endless. And so those AIs can go everywhere, but we need guardrails. Just like today you have the American Constitution, and that was developed 250 years ago by extremely evolved human beings. We need the same for AI. And this is what this AGI Constitution is set out to do. And please go to the website. There's a paper, and you will find the direction as to where you can sign up to contribute to the development of what AGI, the future of artificial narrow intelligence that we have today, to artificial general intelligence. And please, those of you who are listening, please, please, please do not confuse generative AI with AGI. That's not the same. Generative AI is what an LLM does today. You can generate whatever with your text, with picture, it generates something for you today. Artificial general intelligence is the future that, will have goals implemented that you tell us, that will have abilities to reason and support us in a major way.
I think this means that we should be really aware of what are the downsides. For example, obviously there's a great potential here of polluting the infosphere with fake news and conspiracy theories and increasing uncertainty among people. There's issues of the potential abuse by governments and by corporations. There's issues of monopolizing economy by having the power to control it, employment disruptions, perhaps. I think that the whole idea of hijacking, that when I look at history, almost every good idea that humans ever developed was hijacked by some order to take advantage of, and that's obviously can happen here. Something that really concerned me is when I looked at the kind of national political, I don't know how to call it, political national implication, where China, Russia, the United States all saying we have to become the first in AI in order to, so there's another arm race almost being developed here with the psychology or the mentality that we need to leave behind if we want to create a better world. So talk a little bit about some of those adverse things and how you see them.
That's the real danger, and it's actually happening right now as we speak. And we see it's happened in the past in influencing elections, influencing opinions. And so I think the bad cannot be it can go anywhere. So I am currently encouraging everybody to ask themselves, what is my model of the world? How do I see the world? And how can I grow, evolve along, is my model of the world centered around me and mine and narcissistic ways in which, our social media is currently training us? Am I playing into that? Or am I able to break out of it? Am I dependent upon, blowing up my lips? I don't have anything against, using cosmetics and stuff. I do it myself. But is my center of gravity at that level? Or do I care about my group, my tribe? Or do I even care about the world? Because I see that climate change is here. And so how do I use artificial intelligence and all the data that is available in information? Do I use it to become a better human, which is what I encourage any one of us to be, lifelong learner? Or do I play into this? So I would, it is a real danger that with the exponential growth, and, those humans can only understand linear growth. We are like our parents. Our parents were like their parents. We don't move far. This radical exponential growth that tech makes possible. It's very recent, And we don't see it in the beginning. It looks very flat, just like linear. But as we move along, all of a sudden it hits us just like ChatGPT hit us 2 years ago. And as human beings, we need to use that to grow with it and create our own guardrails. And it won't change if we bitch about it, criticize it, and feel sorry about ourselves. It'll only change when we contribute, do our little thing to contribute to creating the world that we want. So the threats are here, and people who are leading countries, I mean, we do have Putin, we do have all these people who are in the old mindset. They haven't come into the 21st century. It's not a Star Trek kind of world in which we live, but we can create that generation. So for me, the goal is to teach AIs wisdom and virtue. And this is not what we are currently doing. The programmers are programming into AI what they are, who they are, how they think, and not how it should be. And that's why we need to get into the conversation and help support, and not bitch, but join forces, because on a round planet there is no choosing upsides. So this is all I can say. I can AIs are here to stay. There is no way how we can regulate them, and the regulators don't know most of the time what they're doing. They don't understand technology, and they do not allow people who understand technology to join them because they think they are better. So that's a big mistake.
Let's get to the regulation in a minute, but I want to pause for a minute and kind of accelerate the threat. It's obviously there's a large number of intelligent people around who are really sounding alarm bells and see the development as in a real existential threat, the end of history, the end of humanity, the algorithm that will completely take over. So it looks like there are two kinds of threats here, if I see it correctly. One is the human threat, that we as humans will use that capability in a harmful way, whether it's individuals or corporations or governments or whatever. And the other one is the inherent threat in the system itself, and the whole idea that it could take over one day, that non-biological system will dominate the world and dominate us and so forth. The way that I look at it, and I wonder how you respond to it, is, you know, we are making, when we talk about AI, we're making ourselves the baseline. In other words, we are the model of intelligence, and well, so it's all kind of really it's human-centric rather than, as you mentioned, cosmic-centric or larger system-centric or whatever. So here we have the thing that when something is developing, something is new, evolution is taking a new step, which is obviously what is happening here with the technology. It produces a threat to existing things, existing ways of doing things. And those begin to react out of fear and out of sometimes fear bordering with hysteria. And I think that kind of fear is what is reflected in much of the alarm that is being talked about AI today around. How do you see it?
I will go back to what I've already said. The question is, do you want to live in fear, or do you want to live in love? And it all comes down to, because what can you as an individual influence really? I mean, if Putin wants to take all his oil and put it into AIs, he can do that, and he will. He actually does. So the question is there, but we are many, many more of those. So how can we evolve as human beings to a point where we can join forces to create that what we want rather than succumb to fear? Because fear is, is a human emotion just like others. And I know from my personal experience, if I'm in fear, I can do nothing. If I, have a conversation with you and trust in the human ability, ever since humanity exists, we have made mistakes, but altogether we live in the most exciting time of being alive, of being human. And we created that collectively. And we have also created guardrails in the past, the biological weaponry that is, we have the UN. This is all human creation. And this is the direction in which I would encourage us to do, everyone in their little thing. See, if I spend my time on TikTok, I don't even have TikTok. At some point I reduced, I just didn't refuse to join this thing. Hours later, I feel bad and I don't know why. Or I wasted my time. Is this how I want to live as a human being? Or do I want to grow? And I think if I teach myself, and this is the reason why I started to meditate. I grew up as an atheist in communist Romania, but during my studies, I had ulcers. And, I would go to the doctor. They didn't, say, oh, take this antacid. It'll be. And so I took the antacid, and half an hour later, I had again stomach pains. So I had to find a way, and the doctor wouldn't know what to tell me, to help myself. So I went back then to library and studied books and came across autogenous training, meditation. So I started to meditate. And ever since then, I kind of, there is something else in my life that I could do to help myself become a better observer, rather than react when somebody, be a puppet, like in a theater. I am under control. And I think of my emotions, of what I do, how I think, how I can contribute. And I think if we cultivate these emotions within ourselves and become better human beings, and we could have a conversation about what that means, then I think we are better empowered individually to find those who think alike, to build the groups with whom we can join forces and have an influence, vote, for instance, but in what direction? Be informed in what to do, not just know what truth is. See, democracies are based on truth, and dictatorships are based on lies and terror. The question is, how do I want to live? Do I want to have a dictatorship in my own life? Or do I want to have democracy in my life? Yeah. Am I guided by wisdom?
That notion of truth, of course, is a very deep one from a cybernetic point of view. We know that system depends on information in order to stay viable and adapt and evolve and so forth. And to the extent that that information is corrupted, this is why it's so important to make sure that this is not being taken advantage of, and kind of, as I mentioned earlier, polluting the info sphere with false information. I think maybe we can scratch a little bit more those more philosophical questions about the nature and intelligence and consciousness and so forth. Because I think, again, it looks that in much of the discussion, we assume, the discussion about the AI, we assume that intelligence is a human prerogative. And obviously the cosmos is intelligent, and there's intelligence all around, and we are only one manifestation. And so is AI, another manifestation that is related to human, of course, but it's part of that continuum of consciousness, perhaps manifesting itself in different ways in different parts of the cosmos. What can we add to that idea?
Yeah,
Well, first, I wanted to respond to your original question that, shall we be threatened, or do we feel threatened by non-biological life? And so you have two dimensions, either by people or by non-biological threats. Well, the non-biological threat comes from people. So
Of course.
ultimately, it's just one, it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
two.
yeah.
So, and there is, and whether we are being threatened or will be threatened by non-biological life depends upon the center of gravity of the governments that we are electing or not electing, depending on the systems of the societies that we collectively and individually are creating. And to pretend, the reason why I'm being very, very philosophical and going on the inside here is to empower people to look at themselves. We are not at the mercy, at least not in a democratic environment, of those out there. We are very much in control of who we are and what we think and with whom we build organizations and how we are manifesting in our lives with our activities. So I think this is extremely important. What is my model of the world? Am I at an egocentric level of consciousness or ethnocentric? Is it all about my country? And I believe that in a global world, I can live isolated, or do I have a world-centric worldview? And I think this is where the personal development and the comes in, and the task that AI is forcing us to face right now. It forces us to become the better humans, not just because they are cognitively much faster than we are, but because we have power over them in what else makes us human that they don't have. So this is such an important distinction. And there is no way how emotions, taste, smell, love, feelings, and so on, can be put into an AI. They can mimic it, they can pretend they know it, but it's not computable. And this puts us in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
But we need to leave that idea that, oh my God, I'm afraid, and trust those who want us to be afraid so that they can control us. No, there's no reason to be afraid. The only thing that we should be afraid of is our leaders who want to control us.
This is really fascinating where it leads us, because it says we have something developing here that can be developed for good or can be developed for worse. And therefore, we need to put some ways to control that development, regulate it or whatever, like regulating the information markets. I don't think that really is a way to think about this. And still, I think legal issues arise in relation to ethical considerations, and there is a way that you can have laws against fake news. You can have laws against AI pretending to be humans, and many things like this. But what do you feel? I was kind of thinking sometimes that you can actually build into AI systems self-regulating capabilities that will monitor their own kind of stuff. What do you think about this need for mediating the development and making sure that at least in the most immediate, while things are being evolving, that they're not harmful?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I mentioned in the beginning this 2015 algorithm that that was basically described in more detail and was easily implemented in AIs by BJ Fogg, from Stanford, because it was behavioral psychology at work there. And behavioral psychology is the second wave in psychology after analytical psychology. But humanity and our understanding about humanity has evolved to humanistic psychology, Maslow pyramid. We are self-actualizing human beings. And this is, as we move up the Maslow pyramid, we become, and this is all has been described by many, many scientists to transpersonal psychology, integral psychology. And this is the kind of knowledge moving from a egocentric level to ethnocentric to world-centric psychology. This is what needs to be implemented in AI that moves beyond behavior. So many AI people that I respect greatly and admire say, "Oh, we only need to control AI's behavior." No, we need to control the psychology that controls the behavior of the AI. And the later stage of consciousness you have in that system, the better is the behavior. Because the behavior can be egocentric, like a 2-year-old kid who just, "Mama, please buy me this thing because I wanted this play toy in a store," to a 16-year-old who, is shooting his colleagues in school. It's just about, because the girlfriend doesn't love me or whatever, the teacher criticizes me, to being an adult human being and a wise human being. And this is what I learned through my Ph.D. There are extraordinary tools from Stanford, Harvard, and MIT that describe human being and human evolution and who we are, from a psychological perspective, that must inform the AI programmers, but they're not at this stage. I know, for instance, there are, the humanistic psychology and human potential movement started in the 1960s, and that's the culture creative. So most of them, the Green Movement came out of it. They have been described. They're amazing. Robert Keegan of Harvard and Suzanne Cook-Reuter from Harvard, Löwinger, Jean Gebser. There are these Piaget, all these extraordinary thinker who have developed the systems that we need to educate the AI programmers so that they eventually be implemented in those AIs, to bring them wisdom and bring them an AI cognitively as to what should and shouldn't be done ethically, morally, from the highest level of consciousness and not the lowest.
So that's really brings us to perhaps the way to wrap up, so to speak. I see that we are way past the hour already, but the whole notion of using AI potential to the best possible advantage, and the one way that I think is very interesting, that the challenges of transition to sustainability basically challenge us to rethink everything almost in a way. And what's very interesting is that the AI forces us to do just that, because it impacts almost every sphere, every domain of human experience, whether it has to do with the physical, the technology, the spiritual on the other extreme, so how society organizes itself, how we treat other forms of life, what kind of an economy we have. So I think that it's a very interesting, how should I say, challenge that we really have to rise, understand how it can help increase our own capacity, make us better, as you're saying, but also kind of accelerate the sustainability revolution, if you like. Let's talk a little bit about that before we open the floor to questions. How can we really use that incredible potential to improve not only us as individual humans, but us as a society, and how can it be marshaled to establish the concept of sustainability as the organizing principle on the planet and make the world a better place?
Well, that's the key thing. That's why my focus is exactly on that. For instance, if you look at NVIDIA, they have created the GPUs to, several stacks of GPUs to be able to model Earth 2. and see how, if you feed it the data on Earth movement, and we have through satellites the data available, they are able to model, what the movements of the meteorological development of the winds and water on the planet and so on. So this is an extraordinary Earth 2. Those of you who don't know it, by NVIDIA, just go. So this is an extraordinary AI application that helps us really address sustainability issues. As we all know, the planetary boundaries, there are 9 of them, and that includes climate change being just one, but water movement and biodiversity and so on. And out of the 9 operating system, planetary boundaries that ensure that we can operate on the planet, there are 9 defined by scientists, and we have already left 6. So we're in the danger zones in those. And AI are helping in many, many, many areas, in the development of new materials for batteries, for instance, so that we could collect this sun energy. I talked about Proxima fusion energy creation, and so on, to create those alternative energy sources, clean energy sources. But those need to be stored in batteries, but batteries of a different kind that are sustainable, in order to have the energy during the night and at times. And it's done. It can be done. The technology today to come to net zero by 2040 is available today. There's very, very little thing that needs to be advanced in order to get there. So, because AI has helped and is continuing to help create new batteries, new energy production technology, new algorithms for producing new materials, the creation of alternative meats so that we don't have to raise cattle that produce a lot of CO2 emissions. Doesn't mean that we won't eat our steak. It's about feeding the entire planet. It's just like driving cars, electric cars today versus horses. We still drive horses, but an electric car help us make the transition to a more sustainable world. There is only 3 sectors of the society that, if we manage to transit energy from fossil fuels to sustainable energy, if we manage to produce food in a sustainable way and transport as a service, not go away from fossil fuel cars, combustion engine cars, to electric cars, those 3 will withdraw from the atmosphere 90% of the CO2 emissions by will not put more into the atmosphere, so that we come to net zero. Withdrawal, carbon sequestration is another, going negative is another thing. But this is all AI supported. All these technologies, I don't have time to talk about this, it's a different lecture, but this is how AI supports the transition to net zero. It's here today, and it is being applied. Apart from all the social media conversation and all of the fear-mongering, this is happening today. And this is extremely powerful. I talk to young entrepreneurs every single day of my life. And my life is so positive because I see how these young people get it. We old farts don't get it, as a majority statement, but they do, and they're already implementing it. We just need to support them, help them become successful, and turn their dreams into reality. And this is why I'm so grateful to be alive today, because we can all together support each other, and we can do it. We can make it happen. So AI and sustainability is an absolute. It coalesces. It works together. However, one more thing before we go, and I want to be appreciative of your time. The future is not AI.
Yeah.
The future is
of course,
quantum
everything at the end will
information.
be what we make of it.
Yeah, well, the future is quantum information science. It's a new science, and it's not on the radar of most people. But this is where we use quantum technology. That's where physics has advanced so much that that will solve with the support of artificial intelligence, cognitive thinking, to make the transition to net zero. And it gives me so much hope. Quantum computers that should be here around in about 10 years, but more so quantum security, quantum algorithms, quantum encryption, that will give us the security, all with artificial intelligence.
Thank you very much, Mariana. As I said earlier, I was looking forward with great anticipation to this conversation. I think it totally fulfilled what I was hoping it will. Thank you for taking the time. It was great talking to you. I hope we'll continue our occasional conversations and talk sometime soon. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Great to see you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye,
Take care,
and
everyone.
let's
Bye.
stick together. Thank you. Bye.